Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time for joining us today about this discussion based on findings from data and environmental assessment of the factories, especially textile factories, and what are the areas that the factories are focusing on, what has been their performance so far, and what are the possible solutions and partner organizations here to support the factories with their improvements. So firstly, an overview of the rundown for today. We'll start looking at the current situation in terms of what's going on in the industry, in terms of data and summary of environmental evaluations. After that, we will look at how certain programs are supporting to establish the framework and the overall infrastructure so that factories be able to carry out the improvement actions that they want to. And then for those factories who are in need of funds, an example of the Good Fashion Fund and how they engage with factories. And finally, about how all of this good investment, green investment can be scaled up via the experience from our friends from WWF in Vietnam. To share a lot of this experience, knowledge, and wisdom today, we will have Ms. Wong. She's with WWF Vietnam. She leads the sustainable finance practice there. She has a lot of experience over 30 years from the banking sector. And she also was formerly working as a chief risk officer. And we'll also have Ms. Nia, also with WWF Vietnam, talking about the engagement that she and her team has with textile enterprises in terms of greening their operations. Then we'll have the man with the money, Mr. Bob Assenberg with the Good Fashion Fund. He'll share with us what is the plan of the Good Fashion Fund, how it's working, how the Good Fashion Fund engages and supports factories who are interested in investing with, let's say, machinery or other aspects to make improvements in their environmental performance. We'll also hear from Mr. Gundolf Klein. He's with GIZ. He leads the environmental component for the regional program Fabric. And he'll share with us the plans that this Fabric program has with regards to performance improvement and supporting factories in making performance improvement. And finally, myself, I'm based out of Hong Kong. And together with our global team, we engage with factories and brands to evaluate, assess, and monitor the improvements in environmental and social aspects. So first of all, thank you to all of you from all over Asia, especially. So salam, xin chào, namaste, good morning, hello, and guten Morgen. Thank you for taking time to join us today, to join this discussion, and also hopefully share your feedback on what you feel after what you see. It's also useful to note that we are lucky that we have representation from almost the entire sector. We have the brand and retailers, we have tier 1 factories, consultants, tier 2 factories, our peers from auditing and testing industry, but also researchers, students, and industry associations. And from the perspective of the tier 2 mills, it's an interesting one, and we'll see why. We see that a lot of you have indicated that you all have multiple wet processes, dyeing, finishing, and so on. It becomes interesting, especially because of the information which is out there in the public domain about the impact that the industry has and the contribution of especially the processing or production phase there. But when we talk of impact, I think the first impact that we have to talk about is what this industry brings to consumers, yeah, like all of us. That's what it makes us feel when we wear our favorite garment, going either to office or to school or for a party or an event or just at home. So that's firstly the positive impact, in addition to all the employment that it brings to several millions of workers all over the world. But there's also the other impact in terms of the impact from the use of chemicals, the impact from the use of energy, the impact from the use of water, and the overall situation that it results in for us. So to put it into perspective, based on this data from Qantas, we see that overall the apparel and footwear sector contributes to a little over 8% of global carbon emissions. And if we look a little further, then of course it's clear that there's a lot of resource utilization in, let's say, the dyeing phase, in the production phase. And hence, of course, that resource utilization comes at a set of cost and impacts, yeah, on carbon, but also in terms of water usage or the health of the ecosystem, or how it impacts the workers, let's say. All of that usage of energy, materials also comes at a cost. We know that overall in operations, the energy cost of a factory is about 30% of the overall running cost of the factory. Yeah? So all of that is also bottom line cost. And now to evaluate all of this investment and status, there are a set of tools. There, of course, is the Higg set of tools on facility level. There's also a set of tools and standards and guidelines from ZDHC, another industry association, but also additional technical standards like the ISO 50001 for monitoring energy management practices, or the standard for water stewardship, or eco labels like the Grüner Knopf or Green Button. All of that looking at what is the current situation at the factory, what is the situation in terms of the policy of a brand and how it operates at retail stores, what's the situation in terms of a final product, let's say. And all of this is being supported by the big boost in terms of transparency. We see the open apparel registry, where we can now see names and addresses of factories and the retailers and brand they are associated with. We have the Detox Live platform, where anybody now can go in, click on one of those circles to see name of the factory and what is the current situation in terms of the findings in the wastewater. And then finally, the overall intention of transparency across the supply chain for the final product, such that we as consumers be able to go pick up a garment, scan a QR code, and then be able to see the overall environmental, social impact of the garment. At the same time, there's a lot of commitment coming in from the CEOs, from the leadership of these large brands and retailers. What you see here are several of these apparel industry giants who have committed to water stewardship to address a lot of that impact that happens in their supply chain. Additionally, many of them have also committed to so-called science-based targets for reducing carbon emissions. So there are several brands, retailers, but also large manufacturers, also in South Asia and Southeast Asia, that have committed to align their processes and cut their emissions, yeah, to sometimes as per 1.5 degree or sometimes even below, along with the plan on what they hope to achieve. So that's in terms of the high level commitments we see. When we asked you, what are the standards, tools that you are using? You all mentioned that a quarter of you are using the Higg FEM for monitoring your own performance, but also sharing with your stakeholders. 18% of you mentioned that you use the ZDHC Supply to Zero framework and guidance. Some of you also mentioned the GRI or the CDP and the SASP standard. And a few of you, 2%, also mentioned that you are aligned as per the TCFD framework, yeah? This Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, where you look at risks and opportunities. So when we look at the current situation, of course, one example is the information we get from Higg and Apparel Coalition, where we see that now in 2020, there are about 20,000 organizations or users for the Higg FEM. We see also the improvement in terms of the average performance within this facility environment module, which covers chemicals, water, waste, energy, or being something about 19%. Yeah? And then we see that a lot of facilities, they talk about further plans of improving their energy use or reducing their GHG emissions going forward. We also see that as time goes ahead, this gap between self-assessment and verification that the factory conducts is getting narrower, which means that the factories are getting a better grip on understanding what is expected out of this Higg FEM evaluation. Yeah, so that's a positive sign. We came across examples where companies have actually disclosed what is the amount of water they have used, what's the amount of energy they have reduced, what's the amount of waste that they have reduced by these practices. We also see a similar trend based on the evaluations that we carried out in South Asia and Southeast Asia, wherein we see that there has been improvement taking place, especially when we talk in terms of water use or we talk of energy and chemicals. But of course, there is scope for even increased progress in this area. We also see that the gap between the self-assessment score and verification score is going down. And then in order to support these improvements, there are several programs that have been rolled out in different countries. These are some examples, some selected examples. We see, for example, in Vietnam, there's the IFC program, there's activity by WWF, by GIZ, but also in other countries like in Bangladesh, where IFC, via the PACT program, supports facilities with investments in order to make improvements. Now, while we looked at all of that data and the current situation, we also hear from you that there still are some roadblocks with regards to implementing sustainable practices and implementing your efforts for making progress on environmental aspects. So a lot of you mentioned that you would still want additional government regulations and policies and incentives. Many of you also mentioned the need for increased local experts and consultants to support you in the countries. 18% of you mentioned that there is insufficient access to finance to make those investments. Yeah. And some of you also mentioned that you see there's still lack of commitment from the brand and retailers. Now, with that, looking at that picture and those roadblocks and challenges you've mentioned, I think it's a good time that we hear from Mr. Gundolf Klein, and maybe he can share how the Regional Fabric Project is supporting on the access to experts, but also on in terms of supporting on performance improvement. Gundolf, if you can please share with us what Fabric Program is planning. Yeah?
Yes, thank you very much. So my screen is visible?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Welcome from my side, and thank you for inviting me to speak about the GIZ fabric activities in the region. The program is called, or the project is called, Promoting Sustainability in the Textile and Garment Industry in Asia, shortly Fabric. I will give first a brief overview of the project, and against this background, we are implementing the program for improvement of environmental performance of factories, shortly PI. Which is targeting directly to the performance improvement at the factory level, to increase the resource efficiency, to increase the sustainability, and to reduce the output or dangerous, hazardous impacts to the environment of the factories. The objective and fields of the work, of our work in general, of the project is support the textile and garment industry in Asia with its transformation towards a socially, economically, and ecological sustainable production. And that means we are covering and focusing, let's say, on all three dimensions of sustainability. And when it comes to textile sector, on the big parts, the social and labor aspect, and on the other hand, to the environmental topics. For that, we are supporting regional dialogue and knowledge transfer so that countries can, or also stakeholders can learn from each other. We are sharing best practices, identify them, prepare them, that it can be shared. We cooperate as well with the private sector. We have ongoing cooperation with several brands, for example, to develop capacity building measures like setting up new training programs. Recently, a new one as what we call climate action, to raise the awareness for the producer, to provide already some general information and also specific ones, for example, how to do a greenhouse gas calculation. We have the topic social and labor standards to support the worker, the garment workers, and also finding solutions, providing support for both sides, producers and the workers. Gender equality at the workplace is always important and a cross-cutting issue for all our activities, what we're doing, and of course the resource environmental management, which is the main focus for today. This project is being implemented in 5 countries, which are from west to east, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Vietnam. And we are cooperating and working very closely together with China and the Chinese outgoing investors, for example, as China the biggest direct investor in some of these countries. That's why we have China as well here in the field of cooperation in the landscape. The logic of the regional program, because we call it the regional one, is that all the countries are facing the same issues somehow, the competitive pressure, they are underbidding each other, and the problem is then at the end that this may result to missing application of standards, sustainability standards. We know so that sustainability is not for free, but it can be also a business case as such, and this is how we're trying to support and to point out such kind of information. The countries we are working with benefit from the increased competitiveness of the garment sector as such. They coordinate joint minimum standards and cooperate on knowledge sharing and common challenges regarding sustainability. Yeah, that's a bit the logic. Again, we are doing our work, our activities, just to frame when it comes now to the environmental topics. The focus here is on this 3 to 4 major parts: the chemical management as one big issue for wet processing and finishing industry, water usage and wastewater, of course, which includes the product integrated measures to reduce, reuse, and recycle water, and as well to it's part of the scope of the project, the end of pipe treatment to comply with international standards and brand requirements. Another part is the whole energy topic, to understand and how to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, implement energy management system to enhance the energy efficiency, and also provide guidance on using renewable energy sources, for example, photovoltaic, solar power. Also, recently we did an assessment on the use of bio-based fuels for Bangladesh and Pakistan, which we are going to publish very soon, just to evaluate and assess if this might be a solution to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. I can say already that this is not really feasible and not really a good approach on a large scale to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. The topic on waste, we identify the potentials for interventions on the regional level as well on country specific, conducting regional studies to map the fabric waste of textile and garment production. And also what we currently doing is setting up a collection system of waste in Cambodia. So the program for improvement of environmental performance of factories, shortly PI. With this program, we aim to achieve a measurable improvement of the sustainable management of resources in supplier factories companies. We have a concrete target to achieve this and to roll this out at least 100 factories across Asia, with a focus on Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Vietnam. And with this activity, we're focusing the first round mainly on the improvement of chemical management based on the ERMC toolkit. I will give you also shortly an update and brief overview what this training program is about. So that is the basis for doing and rolling out the PI program. To monitor the improvement, we are going to use the Higg FEM self-assessment tool first to conduct the baseline and also doing the evaluation after the training is completed. The whole training, the timeline somehow is to around 6 to 8 months coaching for companies, factories who are implementing then the concrete activities and how for achieving smart indicators. Ja. Oh, wait a second. Emilie, du kannst jetzt hier nicht dazu. Sorry, my son is listening as well. So the program outline of PI is like this. First, we onboard the factories. We set up chemical change management teams within the factories. We conduct the baselines. Then we roll out the training by batches, always around 10 to 15 factories in one training course. And then we will do the post-training evaluation afterwards. During the onboarding, we bring the factories together, we introduce them, what does it mean to present the total scope of the training program. We set up the change management teams at the factory level. We call it in this way, as from previous experience has shown, it's quite important to set up to delegate concrete responsibilities at the factory, to implement and needed measures and activities at the factory level. And this is how we call it change management teams, as these teams are including staff from different levels and different ends in the factories. As normally, if you want to achieve really measurable improvement, it's needed to involve more than one department in the factory. For example, for the chemical topic, you have to include the procurement department, you need to include the dyeing section, etc. So line manager, mid-management, technical expert needs to be included in the change management teams. For the baseline, then we assess the situation of the factory to identify the areas for improvement, then where to start, and also to have a baseline then to evaluate really how much is being approved during the training phase. Then we roll out the training, which is based on the ERMC toolkit, as I said, which consists of 11 modules, and we see it as a sound training approach on resource-efficient use of chemicals. And afterwards, we're doing the evaluation, using again the Higg FEM self-assessment tool. Factories will get guidance as well of how to do then what is needed to fill this out. The ERMC is a full training package, which is e-learning based as well for self-learning, which can also be used as a self-learning tool by factories, by interested people. It's freely accessible. Below on the website, there's a link where to find it, tingy.org, which is a e-learning platform where you can find around 300 training courses, and one of them is the ERMC training package. We call it a full training package because it's not only limited to the self-learning, self-paced learning. It also includes a complete concept for blended learning approach as we are going to use it, so that participants can use the self-learning modules for preparation, to repeat the contents, also for doing their homework, etc. And for the blended learning approach, there will be provided additional support for trainers which are using this training course on their Tingy platform. We will set up then closed and individual training courses for each batch we are going to roll out. Language at the moment of the training course is available in English, but below there are also other languages listed, which are currently in the process for the translation and will be available November or December somehow. So where we're going to roll it out in the countries, we will have the local language available, and additional languages will be as well provided at the training platform. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, Gundolf, to you and also to your deputy.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So what we've seen and heard now is how this regional program from GIZ, the fabric program, is going to work together with factories who are interested in making performance improvement, do a status quo assessment based on a standard, and then guide them and support them with trainings on chemical management or climate actions, and then progress. And at this stage, yeah, so Gundolf, with everything that fabric is doing, thank you for working together and making sure that there is capacity on the ground in terms of local experts and consultants, also for engaging with the local ministries and government, and bringing together brands, as you mentioned. At this stage, I think considering the regional nature, Let's also hear live from some of our colleagues on the ground. Fatima, Ms. Fatima Jahan leads our environmental evaluation team in Bangladesh. Fatima, what are you observing? It's a busy time for evaluation these days, environmental evaluation. What do you see as the major challenges for factories today? And what do you say would be the recommendation from your side?
Yeah, thank you, Rakesh, for giving me the opportunity. That means, Bangladesh is a very good industrial area, and peoples are really working to improve their self in terms of energy and other resource improvement. And
Right.
government has also taken some initiatives to implementing some laws and regulations and monitoring that, but still they're having challenges to implement that. The first point is what I would like to say, that availability of natural resources like natural gas and water, it's cheaper than if anyone implementing some renewable energies on renewable resources. So it's very easier to choose the first option. That means using the natural resources. And the second point I would like to share, that considering Bangladesh condition, the factories have to depend on technologies from outside the countries, as we are not developing it by ourselves. So what happened, we have to buy technologies, or we have to depend on the technologies developed by others. And here is the investment issue is there. And the point is, people could be involved themselves to invest on these resources or implementing this kind of technologies. But the point is another, after installation service, maybe one installation is for 5 years or 10 years. After 5 years or 10 years, there might be a maintenance and other thing is required. Then people get less response from the investor who are implementing this size. So all the investment is going to loss for themselves. So these are the main challenges what I feel working with the factory management. And I think if we could overcome from this type of situations, so people will be more free to invest for this kind of investment. So it will be cost effective for them also.
Perfect. Got it. Thank you, Fatima. Yeah. So best available technology coming from overseas and investment required there. And then after installation, also infrastructure for continuous service and maintenance. Thank you, Fatima.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fatima.
Then
let's go. Thanks. Then let's go to the subcontinent. Mr. Shivendra Parmar, what are you observing there? He's our technical manager in India. Shiven, what is the observation? Yeah.
Yeah, hello Rakesh. We also discussed with a lot of factories related to the current scenario related to the environments and what challenges they are facing. So main, like what Ms. Fatima has mentioned, related to the challenges in the funding and related to high cost involvement and all that. And apart from that, they are talking mainly concentrate on the requirements related to wastewater and all that. Earlier in India, there is only the conventional parameter requirements are there, but they are saying the other certification, they have stringent requirements are. So that is also the challenges. Other thing they are talking about whatever the problems are there to rectifying the process and all that. So they don't have any documents or anything about the awareness to create awareness within the factory, how to improve it and what are the solutions if there is a certain failure related to these requirements for the environmental sustainability. So they need the expertise for that also.
Okay. Thank you, Shivendra. Yeah. So expertise, knowledge, root cause analysis, and technology and funding. Thank you. And then finally, let's also listen from on the ground situation in Vietnam. Ms. Chow.
Yes.
What would you say? Yes, please.
Yes, yes. When we approach the vendors in Vietnam, Vietnam have a lot of factories for textile and footwear industry, but the difficulty that we meet, that maybe the first one is the knowledge, the awareness about of the factories to the environmental or sustainability for in environment. So maybe almost of factories, they are so not familiar with some function as well as some knowledge related to environment. So we need more technician and more the training, like seminar or the in-depth training for vendors in Vietnam. And the one thing that we meet the difficulties is the language in Vietnam, because maybe the English or the second language is not familiar for the vendors in Vietnam, and the local person in factory, they just good with Vietnamese. So we need the local expert to consult and support more about this problem.
Got it. Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
And another thing is maybe from the buyer in Vietnam, the road mode, the road to come to the zero is not spread out for all vendors. They just maybe the step by step for the stage 3 vendors first, and after that they will move to another vendors. So now maybe all of the vendors, they don't know too much about that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, got it. Thank you, Ms. Chow. So we heard about the need for knowledge and local expertise, and I think Gundolf, you and your fabric program, your team will support in those aspects, yeah? But Bob, we keep hearing the thing, investments, overseas, funding. So we also asked the participants, what are the areas where the factories plan to invest in? A lot of them mention energy efficiency aspect, chemical management aspects, waste reduction aspect, water efficiency aspects, yeah? And we also asked them, what are the investment products that they have used? And as you see, over 60% of them have not used any of these green or sustainability linked investment products, yeah? So perhaps, Bob, you can take us through this journey on what Good Fashion Fund is planning to do.
Sure, Rakesh. Thanks, and thanks for having me here. Will you do the slides, Rakesh? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me here. And as you already introduced me earlier, the man with the money, that's something to live up to, I think. But I think the important thing here is, and as already mentioned by some other speakers as well, it's not just about the money. It's also about knowledge. It's about connections. And that's what we're trying to do with the Good Fashion Fund. Maybe you can take the first slide, and then I can give you a bit of the background on the Good Fashion Fund. Because particularly the idea of the Good Fashion Fund is to support manufacturers in 3 countries, which are Bangladesh, India, and Vietnam, really to give them the opportunity and the finance to adopt technologies that have an impact. So technologies basically have an impact in terms of savings, financial savings, but also have an environmental impact. Because the idea, I think, is, do you have the slide, Rakesh, or is it?
Yes, it's on screen, yeah.
Okay, I don't see it here. Okay, fine. That's just mine. Okay. So now I think it is basically important that whatever adoption of technology is taking, that it has an impact on a number of elements. And we're particularly, I think, Rakesh, we don't see the slides. I just see a comment here, which is the same for me.
My apologies. Are you able to see it?
Here we are. That's fine. Yeah. So basically, that's fine. That's the introduction. So here, I think basically what we try to do is support manufacturers in the 3 countries, in India, Bangladesh, and Vietnam, to give them the opportunity and the finance to adopt and purchase equipment that has an impact. And impact is really looking at, as I mentioned, financial impact, because we believe in the end, sustainability and finance actually, and financial benefits should go together. So we're providing long-term lending in dollars to exporting companies, which is mainly the case for apparel companies. Long-term dollars which means that it can take up to 5 years or so, which is typically something which is not available within the market. But it takes some time to implement these technologies to get the payback. And that's actually how we try to support the manufacturers in the 3 countries. And we truly believe that impact can be made, and investments can be either on replacement of current equipment, or it can be for expansion related, but it should have a huge impact. And a huge impact in that respect for this particular project, we look at 50% impact or reduction. And that could be on a number of goods, as we call them, but it's related to the topics that you already mentioned before. It's related to water, it's related to water use, it's related to energy efficiency, it is related to chemicals and material usage. But what we do in addition to that, which is an important element, is we also look at the social element. So for ourselves, it's important that we also see that jointly with the manufacturer, we do an assessment of the social standards, and it could be gender equality, that could be things related to living wages, it could be actually the general safety, health and safety conditions. But what we do with the manufacturer is that we agree upon some steps to be taken. So we take an assessment. For the environmental side, we take the Higg FEM, but for the social, we do, for social part, we have our own assessment, and we jointly agree with the manufacturer to take steps in that respect. That's what we try to do. So the initiative the fund is an initiative of the Lourdes Foundation, previously meant CNA Foundation, who has set it up jointly with Fashion for Good as a sub-advisor. Fashion for Good is an Amsterdam-based association promoting basically sustainable apparel sector, and also supporting technologies that make an impact in that respect. So that is our part as a sub-advisor. We also work closely with a joint venture of Adelphi and Global Cut, basically as a development evaluator, which is supported by the Lourdes Foundation, really with an idea to get a continuous improvement program in terms of how we define, how we measure impact, and how it can actually be applied to follow-on investments. Maybe one thing on that side, our fund is on the one hand to give access to, we call them small and medium-sized manufacturers. The definition here is currently it's manufacturers between $10 and $200 million of sales of revenue, so big, medium-sized. And therefore we go for state-of-the-art technologies. So we think it's important to get access to the technologies, and we provide them finance, long-term US dollar finance to do so. Also, we're looking at scaling up new technologies. So there could be technologies, particularly in the tier 2 area, I think, where we're talking about dyeing. For instance, we're looking at CO2 dyeing, elements like that, where it's really disruptive, which has not been completely scaled up yet, but we're matching and we're connecting technology companies with manufacturers willing to do that. So in the end, what we're doing is we're providing a loan to a manufacturer with the intention to adopt and implement technologies. Maybe next slide, Rakesh. Yeah, so I already mentioned that it's quite broad what we do. So in terms of, and that's the great thing about the fund, so we have the ability to finance different elements of the manufacturing process. So it's about, as I said, tier 2. We also look at yarn production, but a lot of it where the benefits can be made and where there's also new technology and improvements coming up are in dyeing. We see a lot of also on washing and pre-treatment, but particularly also in many cases where we look at the potential investments, it's about wastewater treatment, which is of course because of the pollution that it has a huge impact if you implement a new system on that side. Same with printing and finishing. And we also look at recycling close to the factory, because we do believe that's pre-consumer. We do believe that that's also an opportunity to reach impact on that side. So our funds are focused on the purchase of the equipment, but also related infrastructure to make it happen. Maybe next slide. Yeah, so what is what we do? As I already mentioned, long-term dollar finance. So for exporting company, up to 5-7 years, depending a little bit on the payback period. Normally it's up to 5 years with a grace period. The amounts that we target are between $1 and $5 million, which is, and I think that's an important one. That might be a big amount. At the same time, it's also what we're looking at is this CapEx. So we work closely with local banks in terms of providing working capital to the manufacturers. But what you see is that this long-term dollar-related loans, this is something which is not available for everyone. So we really try to work together with the local banks, where the local banks would do more the working capital-related finance, but we can really provide the finance for the CapEx. And the way we structure it, we're in that sense relatively flexible. It's long-term debt, so it's a loan with some of the conditions related to that. But it's also in terms of the repayment, etc. It depends also on the cash flow of the company and the availability to pay back. We have a competitive interest rate, which we're looking, of course, as a risk profile, and typically it's LIBOR based with a margin depending on the risk. Coming back to the point that I mentioned, the man with the money, sure, but it's also about knowledge or expertise, and I think that's an important element as well, because manufacturers that work with us do get expertise in terms of, as I already mentioned, Fashion for Good, which is a well-known association in that respect. They do have, it's a platform. They have access and knowledge of the latest technologies. In addition to that, we also work closely with some of the more technical companies, also to assess and help where needed the manufacturers in choosing the right equipment. So what is the best equipment to do if I want, for instance, I want to reduce the impact or actually improve the financial performance related to printing, for instance, or to dyeing. What should I do? We can help you together with the partners on that. I already mentioned the partnership of Adelphi and Global Cut, and also Lena is part of the call for any further questions on that later on. And there, I think it's good to see, so how can we actually demonstrate the impact? So how do we do it? In that respect, we work, as I said, as a first initial check with the Higg self-assessment. At the same time, we also do baselining for our investments. So we really look at if it's replacement versus the current equipment, and otherwise, if it's new expansion related, we look at the standard in the industry. And for our total assessment, we do financial, of course, analysis. But we also work very closely with social advisors. We work closely with the Fair Wear Foundation from the Netherlands, and also local environmental advisors. And I think an important element is not just us working. What we really try to do is to create a sort of a triangle where you do have manufacturers, brands, technology companies, and we're somewhere in the middle. We're somewhere the glue getting them together. And that's actually how we want to create deals and how we are creating deals. Last bit then, I think, so it's knowledge, it's money, but it's also connection and association. I think that's an important one as well. So for us, we're a fund, 60 million target. We're just under 20 million right now. So we're still fundraising in that respect. We're not going to change the whole industry by this one particular fund, but we're going to demonstrate it. So we're really going to demonstrate, and that's also what we try to do jointly with Adelphi and Global Cut, that this is the way forward for the industry. Sustainability is the way forward, but also sustainability with an economic business model behind it. And so this we see as a first fund of money to follow. It's actually the first fund. This is particularly only focusing on supporting apparel manufacturers. But it's also, I think, a demonstration effect to the whole industry and investors that this can make a change and that this is the way forward and that we should go. So just it's a demonstration effect. But also, I think working with us could make it interesting for manufacturers is we of course, we're an international finance party. We do have our process. We're strict, but at the same time also pragmatic in the way we do things. So we try to minimize all the work related and all the preparation need to be done as much as possible, of course, with the standards that we have within our process. But we also have a network of brands, manufacturers and industry leaders that we work with. It's either through our own expertise, but it's also through the Lourdes Foundation and through Fashion for Good. So it's really not just the funding, it's more than the funding. It's also the association, and I think it's the connection that you do get. And as I said, it's a demonstration, in fact, and therefore also if you are actually working with us, so if we invest in you as a manufacturer, we really want to bring this forward as the front runners, the ones actually making a difference. Yeah, maybe next slide. Yeah, this I already mentioned. So this is primarily the linkage between the sustainability and the business case. Just an example. But what we do typically with the investments, and the investment can be in combination of a number of equipments that you purchase. It's to reduce consumption and usage of the elements I mentioned on water, energy, materials. But it's also the social element, which is an important element in what we do. And reduction in cost, which we're looking at, can really offset the interest charges in a loan. And in the longer term, if the loan is being repaid, you just have the benefits. So that's really the idea. We give you the time to sort of, through the longer tenor of the loan, we give you the time to install it, to get the benefits. And for the longer term, it's certainly going to be beneficial because there will be no more loan-related expenses there. Yeah, maybe the last one, and then I'm almost done. No, I think I'm done. So what are we looking for? Yeah, we're looking for environmentally, socially minded manufacturers. So we're looking at for those front runners, as I mentioned. So that really truly believe that sustainability is the way forward, but also willing to improve and invest in that. And we help you on that. We can help you in terms of, as I mentioned, the expertise, the knowledge, the linkage, but also the finance supporting that. That is what we're looking for. We're looking for if you work with us in an investment plan. So what are you planning to do? We can help you and tweak it and change it there, but it should be focused on this reduction of water, energy, or chemicals. But you should also be willing to work with us, because we do an assessment on the environmental side, we do an assessment on the social side. And jointly with you, we create an environmental social action plan, which is actually the way forward for the coming years, which is part of the loan document, which is therefore firm. But so that comes attached to it, which is even making more improvements, I think, to the factories. But at the same time, it's something that comes with our finance. And in terms of companies, yeah, it's important. As I think from a financial point of view, we're looking at profitable companies. But where local banks and a lot of other financiers might be very narrow in terms of the financing conditions in some cases, and rightly so for good reasons, but we do have the ability to provide long-term funding for it. If you have US dollar income, and as I said, the minimum should be around 10 million. If you do state-of-the-art technologies, it can be up to 100 or 200 million, and then we're looking at more disruptive solutions. But in the end, it should be, your company should be financially stable. You should have profitability and the ability to pay for the loan. But we can provide you then really with that particular, I think, CapEx related finance that you need, and the knowledge and the network. Maybe next one. Yeah, I think that's it. So if you have any more sort of questions, it's on our website, goodfashionfund.com, where you can get more information, and you can contact myself or one of the members of the investment team.
Okay.
Thank you, Rakesh.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Bob, for sharing with us this holistic approach, bringing together, as you said, and gluing together technology providers and the right brands, but also the right factories. And as we move ahead now, we talk about, of course, what you are doing, what you're trying out, let's say a large scale proof of concept. But we are talking now about a factory being able to go down to its neighborhood bank and say, hey, I'm looking at investing ABC, that's the CapEx I'm looking for. Will you give me a loan for long term? Will you give me a loan at preferential rates and so on? So we of course hear that there are several banks who have signed up for initiatives about supporting the industry and the market and the world towards this transition. But at the same time, we also hear the challenges, both from the factories, but also from investors, that sometimes investors are saying, well, we're not too sure which standards, technical standards we should be looking at when a factory is disclosing their performance, or when investors or factories are saying, well, I don't know what additional metrics I need to report on with regards to risks based on where I'm based, the country I'm based in, or what can I do as a manufacturer to disclose in a manner and in a format that the investor is confident about what I'm disclosing. Yeah. And again, the topic of too many metrics and lack of harmonization sometimes. So for that, Ms. Hong and Ms. Nia, it would be very useful to hear about the outcome of your feasibility study in Vietnam with regards to working together with banks and developing this bankable solutions.
Yeah,
and what you have found so far.
Thank you, Rakesh, for giving us the opportunity to presenting our progress work on the bankable projects for the textile sector. So shall I now share the screen?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what I'm presenting here is focused on the one of 4 work area that the Green in Textile program in Vietnam, WWF, are focusing on, which is to promote finance for green investment at the textile companies, especially small and medium-sized enterprise. So together with my colleagues, Ms. Hương, we will be presenting you shortly of what we are doing for promoting green finance, and also what green finance option we are exploring, and also a short recommendation on how can we collectively together work to promote and boost green finance. So we working with a batch of more than 50 textile wet processing factories, training them and provide technical support on various water efficiency solutions. You can see here on the screens, ranging from low material to liquid ratio dyeing washing machine to green chemicals using ZDHC approach, or try to reuse good water output from the process, or recycled wastewater, also recollection of the cooling water. In the last 2 years, we have.
Ms. Nia, yeah. Could you move to full screen?
Okay. I forgot. Yeah.
Thank you.
So over the last 2 years, we have implemented now 5 feasibilities study of the green investment at factories, small and medium-sized textile factory. And the first 3 projects are implemented at one denim dye washing factory, applying 3 new technology, water-saving technology, including ozone, e-flow, and low material to liquid ratio washing machines. Because it's applying at one factory, so our analysis is integrating the environmental benefit for 3 projects at the same time, and it shows here the water reductions, chemical reductions, energy reductions by each technology. You can see here, and also some photo of the ozone, e-flow, and water-saving washing machines here. An overview of the 3 bankable projects. After analyzing the potential environmental impact, the application of this technologies will improve and save in 54%, equivalent to 100,000 cubic meter per year. And this amount of water also more than 67% of costs for fuel, and totally it's cut down 53% CO2 emissions. And the total investment is nearly 1.7 million US dollar for this amount, this quantity of machines. And the average payback period is 4 years. So it's quite promising under the perspective of the banker, because normally this investment this will be the long-term loans, and average payback period less than 5 years is promising and profitable for the investor. Here we have analyzed the internal rate of returns ranging from 28 to 70% compared to the current local market interest rate of 9%. So it is profitable. This is the detail of the our financial analysis for each bankable projects. Let's go first with ozone. So you can see that the reason why ozone and e-flow here have the quite short payback period is because the environmental saving and the saving cost will be accumulated from water, from energy. So so this make the payback shorter and higher. So we the key parameters for our analyzing is the CapEx, investment cost, and the expected resource savings in US dollar, and then coming to the analysis of the internal return rate and the payback period. So I go through these 3 bankable projects, and I go to this very recent bankable project number 4 as one small fabric factories. They are small. If you can see that their monthly water consumption is only around 2,000 cubic meter of water. So they are quite small. And this is the technical description of the reverse osmosis membranes for recycling textile wastewater. And they hope that they will recover around 60% of the wastewater volumes back to production. This is the initial feasibility study analysis of these investments. And you can see that out of the total water savings of around 6,000 cubic meter, 60,000 cubic meter, the savings is this amount in Vietnamese đồng. This is the total savings. But the CapEx is quite high. Here's the CapEx. Nearly 5 billion Vietnamese đồng, equivalent to more than 230,000 USD. And so that's come to the payback period, which is less profitable and for the bank. It is more than 6 years. And we find that, and the factory also find it's not profitable for them to make this investment decision at this moment. And the reason is that for this bankable project, they can only make a saving from the water, not from energy. So that is why we now concerned that if our water stewardship promote the water saving only, investments, then the payback period will be high and not promising for the investor and for bankers. That's why up to the level of factory, we conduct the promote and the upscalings of the green investment for the entire sector. And that's why we are conducting the feasibility study for the dedicated green credit line for the textile sector. And this, we work with the banking sector to convince them of the value propositions of the sector in Vietnam, convince them that the environmental risk of the sector is also can be removed and reduced through shifting to green technology. And it is a great post-negative prejudice for the sector and hindrance the sector to develop and attract the green finance sources. Also, with the green investment, it can get high return for the banks. And that's to convince the banks of this, we inform through our feasibility study of the credit size, forecast on the credit side and credit demand in the next 5 years. And so we provide an inventory of green technology and machinery equipments available in the market, like what we just do with the individual factories green investment. We listed out the CAPEX, the OPEX, the payback period, also the case study of this bankable project. And we also list out some green finance scheme available to corporate and SME in Vietnam. So now with the part on the green finance scheme and options, I now introduce my colleagues, Ms. Hương, to continue presenting you technical green finance insight. Over to you, Hương.
The next slide, please.
Hương, do you hear us?
Yeah, but actually it seems like you present wrong. Please change to another slide. The slide we.
Okay.
I think you opened the wrong one.
Oh. Okay. Okay. I will. Sorry. Hương, are you here there, or you? I can stop.
I'm here, but yeah, but you do you want me to share my screen?
Yeah, because
okay.
Now I need to save time.
Okay, so I have to move it quickly to the right one.
Thank you.
Okay. Screen. Hello. Do you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Can you go to the slide?
Okay, let me see. Actually, in my screen, it shows the full option already.
Yeah, we can see it now. Green finance options.
Yeah, did you see the full screen, or is this on the presenter mode?
No, it's full screen. It's good.
It's full screen, right? Okay, yeah. So continue with what Mrs. Nga said, that we, investigate firstly with the bankable projects, with the factories, and then on the upskilling, we are working with the banking and the leasing sectors. Initially, we are only working with the banking sector, but when we are working with the factories, we do find that for textile sector, textile garment sector, then the leasing part is quite prominent, especially for the SME segment. So we also working with the leasing sector. And basically, what we see during our observation, we have already investigated together with the consultants a lot of options. However, at the end of the day, we just find out that there are only 2 viable options for the Vietnam market at the moment. One of them is via the banking channel, and the other one is the leasing channel. And the main channel for Vietnam should be the banking sector, because you may also aware that the banking sector injected 100%, 130% of the country GDP into the economy. So as the main channel. And for the medium and long term, for the textile greening sector, we have the credit size per ticket is between 1.5 to 2 million US dollars in VND equivalent. And the tenor for, the tenor for the banking sector is also 5 years. Actually, it's the maximum. And the interest rate in the COVID situation is low a little bit, it's to 8% per annum. However, in Vietnam, the beauty of lending is that you have no fees, so you only have an interest rate. Concerning the collateral requirement is quite diversified. They can allow you to use land use rights, machinery and equipment, receivables and inventory, long-term contracts. Yeah, and about the criteria, it's not limited. Actually, they're not limited. You have to be, machinery or equipment. You can be at anything as long as it's profitable. Yeah, and so it's right for the banking sector. However, if you observe the three feasibility studies Mrs. Ngab just showed you in a few minutes ago, you may also see that for the machinery and equipment investment, then the payback period, the NPV, IRR are all pretty good, pretty decent, and they really meet with the banking criteria. However, when it comes to the wastewater recycling project, that is completely different. Yeah. So therefore, it's not possible if the factory want to focus on environmental factor only. If they invested on the whole new projects and environmental portion of the whole project is pretty low, like a 20%, then it will fly with the local banking sector. But if the portion of the investment is more than 20%, that is something really challenging for the borrowers. Yeah. The next thing we investigate is about the leasing sector, because you may know that in the Vietnam market, many of the textile companies are SMEs. Of course, the SME here, there are quite a variety of definition of SME. The type of SME which Bob just mentioned about up to 200 million US dollars in sales. For Vietnam, is a kind of like a medium size or large corporate already. Yeah. Oh, sorry. So basically, we look at the SME, but SME also have a lot of definition from the banking sector and the leasing sector as well. But usually for SME, then the leasing is really a promising route for them, because it's like their financial statements may not be handsome enough, to show to the bank that they make that much a profit. And of course, for the SME, the way they organize their financial statements is pretty chaotic. So they are kind of like very on a minimum profitability, or sometimes they are making loss. Yeah. So if they are making loss, then they are not eligible for lending. So SME, but with the asset-based finance, which is the leasing, then it's possible, because the lessor really based on the machinery and equipment, and if the lease amount is decent, then they agree to go for it. However, the challenges for the textile and garment company is that the leasing sector, they only look at machinery and equipment, i.e. any things with generating cash flow to repay back the lease, to pay the lease monthly lease rental. So anything like wastewater recycling won't fly for leasing companies. Yeah. So therefore, with water stewardship, which WWF is looking at, the leasing part is not really the one which can can cover all kind of needs. It can cover, like, you change or transform machinery and equipment from, high water usage to a low water usage. That is fine. But if you want to recycle the wastewater, then it wouldn't be the case. So that is for the leasing sector. Here we also, in our study, we also mentioned a little bit of green bond, and we think that green bond is like for the future, because our study, you want to keep the horizon is between like 3 to 5 years. So that's why we include also the green bond option. But green bond option is not the option at the moment, because you may know that the bond size is large. Usually it's like more than $100 million each issuance, and all of the proceeds come immediately upfront when the banks or any bank will not have enough portfolio of the borrowers which can immediately consume the 100 million. And if it's green bond, then there are a lot of other requirements, like a certification that the proceeds really go on green purposes, not greenwashing. So there are a lot of downside for green bond at the moment for the Vietnam market. So it is not the option now, but we hope that it will be the option in maybe three to 5 years time. The other thing, this is the one we think that Vietnam should go for, which is blended finance. So for the blended finance, we may opt for commercial portion, which you either taking the form of the loan from the banking sector or the lease from the leasing sector. Anything is fine. But we also need the soft loan portion or grant, if any. So basically, for the commercial portion, we still agree with the 5 years. But for the soft loan portion, many of you may already experience that many of the multilateral, they have a very long tenure and a good rate. So if you mix them two together, then the blended rate and the blended tenor can be much better. And of course, the transaction should be structured, properly for each component. So for example, wastewater treatment may go to soft loan or grant, and machinery and equipment may go to commercial portion and things like that. And of course, for the multilateral agencies, they will always want to have a senior position in the loan. So usually the commercial portion is always subordinate, and the senior portion is the multilateral agencies. Okay, so that is from that particular finding. So WWF is also working internally to promote with the multilateral agencies, with the development and financial institutions, to call for subsidized finance for water efficiencies, for many other sectors, but the textile and water sector is one of them. So we also have a lot of like a tool or framework to engage DFI. And during our engagement with DFIs, apart from ESG integrations and many other things, which we work on the finance front, we will definitely also call for the grant or soft components to help us to with the water stewardship, especially for the water recycling, wastewater treatment. So that's all for us. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Nia, and also Ms. Wong, and all the best with the next steps of this study. Yeah? Now, having heard about what the current situation is in terms of performance of factories, how GIZ Fabric, for example, is supporting with the buildup of capacity, both of knowledge, but also working with factories, then looking at the good fashion funds on how you engage, bring together both technology solutions, brands, and then support factories, and then the possibility of scaling up. I guess at this time, it's useful to also hear from you. After all of what we have seen so far, what do you feel is required? What would you say would be the 3 points that you would need in order to go ahead and progress with regards to making improvements in environmental performance and making those investments? Do you feel that first and foremost, we should have a policy with regards to living wages? Do you feel that there should be a way of easily and quickly getting access to green loans from local banks, or that maybe the insurance company should also look at your investments and the changes that you've made to give you preferential insurance premiums, or the governments to step up even more and provide additional investment support, to have, let's say, a bigger and clear pool of local experts and a database of all the solutions that we've seen from what Bob shared with us from the Good Fashion Fund, from the examples from WWF, from, let's say, the informed choice matrix of GIZ. Would you like that there's this big database? And maybe, would you want that the Good Fashion Fund be scaled up 100 times? To have easy on sustainability, to have clarity on technical standards, to have those KPIs clearly visible when these big brands are making commitments on carbon reductions, water stewardship, chemicals, that there may be a big database where everybody be able to see their commitments. Yeah? And then to have maybe more transparency and easier comparability of performance. If you all can please select, it gives us an idea of what you're thinking and feeling. Ryan, are we good with the feedback so far? Should we display it for all participants? Yeah. All right. Thanks for your feedback. Yeah. So we see that you feel that there should be an easier way to get access to green loans from local banks, and that also government incentives should increase access to local experts and databases and so on. Thanks for all that feedback. At this stage, let's take up a few of the questions that we've got. I think, Bob, there's one that goes in your direction, where the question is that brands, a lot of brands even today would feel that when factory is making investments into improving environmental performance, the examples we saw from you are where the factory is implementing resource efficiency, whether it's energy, chemical, water, and hence in the short to medium term, actually making savings and is able to recover the investments. Yeah. So there's this feeling that sometimes brands are not willing to pay more for a product which is made in a more responsible manner. Perhaps in our world today, all these externalities have not been included in the product price. Yeah. So what are you observing when you bring together brands and technologies providers and factories? Do you also get involved in such discussions on how it will impact the price of the product?
Sure. Thanks, Rakesh. No, I think that's a good observation. I think so far you're absolutely right to say that a lot of brands have also been focusing on price only, which has been the key element of maybe of the contacts with manufacturers. What you do see, and that's where I truly believe that the sector will change, is that there is a push also for the consumers. So I think in the end, also the consumers have a big say in that by requiring brands and the related manufacturers to produce in an environmental or socially, I think, responsible manner. And I think that should and will lead to prices being higher, because it's not just about, I think, the apparel industry. I think worldwide, I think the pricing or the true pricing, whatever you want to call it, so also having the environmental or social benefits included in the prices of products. This is also definitely something which will happen within the apparel industry. But these things take time, as you know. And I think it's what you see in this apparel industry, how it differs from a lot of other industries as well, that it's relatively fragmented. In that respect, it's not a supply chain where the brands are the owners of the facilities themselves. So in that sense, it makes it more complicated and more difficult maybe than other sectors to make that move and to make that change. But it's truly the way forward for the apparel sector, I think also for other sectors in the world. So I see a movement there, but it's a slow movement. I also see that, but it's definitely something that we take up. And I think also the example you mentioned in terms of living wages, this is definitely something also which we do discuss if we talk with brands and manufacturers, and also to see if that can be implemented. And our partner, Fair Wear Foundation, is also having an assessment of that and trying to implement that with the investees or the manufacturers that we work with, jointly with the brands, because brands are also backing the Fair Wear Foundation. So maybe a long answer, but I see that there is a move forward, but there's definitely something to be gained there.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Bob. And then there's one question that goes towards you, Ms. Nia and Ms. Wong. If you have already tried out the financial leasing model.
We are exploring, because when we go to factories, then we see lots of factories have already used that. So the market and the transaction has to go before our promotion. What we try to do here is to upscaling the leasing transaction among the new procurements of machinery, green machinery and equipments to at the whole sector.
Yeah.
So Will, you want to add something?
Oh yeah, sure. Basically, if you look at the leasing model, and if you look at the SME, then the leasing model is very much the one we should go for. The reason you may see is that firstly, you look at the size of the transaction, because usually factory in Vietnam, they will not change all of their machinery and equipment at once, even though if they have like a 20, 30 washing machine, but at one time per a transaction, they only change like about 9, 8, 6 or 10 machines at one time. So for those reasons, each and every transaction is quite small. It's like, $1.5 million only. And for the machinery and equipment, then they may see that it's a very much like, suitable size for the leasing transactions. And also each every equipment, they are separate. So it's very easy for them, for each of the machine, they can have one set of documents. And if they have to take repossession of the machinery and equipment, then it's easier for them to, sell it out again in the secondary market.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah. Then Alina from Adelphi, you are also with us now. And we heard from Bob about this idea of scaling up the Good Fashion Fund and working in those countries. What are the ideas at the moment in the, let's say, in the battlefield of ideas when you are looking at scaling up and working in the countries? What are you observing? What are the things that you feel excited about? What are the things you feel still need to be resolved, to support your plans?
Yes, thank you, Rakesh, for the question. Yes, I completely agree with the points that were mentioned by Bob, that there is going to be a lot of impact that we can achieve and also scale up. And we are involved in the social due diligence as well as the environmental due diligence as well. And from the conversations we had, I think there are a lot of points that can be addressed with these technologies, but also I'm very happy to see the commitment on the different levels from the different stakeholders we've been speaking with. So yeah, I'm really excited about this. Okay,
Alina, one more as we go around with all the speakers and to get your wisdom. 1 year from now, we heard from Bob, the target is 60 million, yeah? What do you hope? 1 year from now, let's say it's September 2022, we are having this talk where we want to hear from Lena and Adelphi Group. What did you observe? What would you hope to be saying and sharing with us?
I think, I like that we can go in many different directions. So to have examples of how to apply really disruptive technologies and become more innovative together with producers that are really interested in trying out this and going really to taking this topic to the next level.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Lena. Yeah.
Rakesh, maybe
yes.
Also from my angle,
sure.
Add to that?
Absolutely.
Maybe
please.
not next year, but what I will hope, and that's also why I think the initiatives that the WWF are taking to include the local financial sector are really important. I think it's good for the Good Fashion Fund to grow, But ultimately, what we want to do is actually demonstrate that this sector investment into, I think, sustainability and environmentally positive equipment is something that can be financed. So we really, and actually make it more scale, make it more efficient. So ultimately, our goal would be that the local financial sector will take it on, will take it over. Our ultimate goal would be that we no longer need it.
Okay, thank you for that, Bob. All right. Then Ms. Nia and Ms. Wong, what do you hope after this feasibility study is out and you start engaging now with local banks and also with international MNCs 1 year from now? What are you aiming at, and what would you hope to be sharing with us?
Yeah. We are on progress to finalize the feasibility study report, and we targeted the local bank to convince them and consult them to setting up the preference and policies for supporting the greening of the textile sector. Like we said, if this green investment is to be totally marketed and competitive, it could not be at the beginning. It needs to get some subsidy either from governments or from international development funds like Good Fashion Funds, or international bank like World Bank or ADB or IFC to make the subsidized portions incentivize for factory that go forward with greening transformations. Yeah, we hope, and we here opening up to all the collaborations and networking possible to support the sector to go green. And especially here, we do not only talk about large corporate with the large revenue and with export threshold. We talk with small and medium-sized enterprise with already have production 10 years, 20 years before, and now they need to change to new equipments. So this is the chance for us altogether to support them.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, Gundolf, the fabric program, of course, goes until mid-2023 or so. But next year, what do you hope to achieve with the PIE program and the other capacity development efforts?
Within under the PIE program, which is planned to finish by end of next year, we will achieve a substantial improvement, at least in 100 factories in Pakistan, Bangladesh, Vietnam. Beside that, we are also developing several other activities, training materials on water topics, for example, on energy efficiency, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. As well, we're going to roll out and support multipliers that they can that they can support factories later on. For this, I don't have the concrete number of factories in mind, but for the PIE program, as I said, at least 100. Most likely, we will overachieve a bit this goal in these countries.
Okay, all the best with those plans, Gundolf.
Yeah,
from our side, we often hear about all these efforts need to be a win-win. I would say maybe we should think of win, 5 wins, yeah? So whatever, after all of this is done, I think the worker has to win. The manufacturer has to win. The environment around the manufacturer has to win. The brand has to win. And then I guess also the consumer needs to win with everything that we do. I want to say, first of all, a big thank you to all the participants for taking time to listen and to absorb a lot of the wisdom and experience from our distinguished panelists. And to all of you, thank you for taking time. Thank you, Miss Nia. Thank you, Lena. Thank you, Miss Wong. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Gundolf. And thank you also, Ryan, for making everything happen. Please take care. And yeah, we'll be sharing the presentation and the slides later. Until the next time we talk. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.